Video games have come a long way over the years. From this to now this. There are all types of games for all types of people. Some games like Super Mario, where you jump and run from point A to point B. Some you're the mayor of an island. Others you're a security guard trying to survive deadly animatronics. And others, you capture animals and force them to fight. In a kid-friendly way, of course. Video games weren't always this way, though. In fact, video games crashed into complete bankruptcy. But there was a saving grace. For a little big company went in and caused one of those soon to be many turning points. This is how Nintendo took a broken market and turned it into one of the biggest types of media there is. This all starts in 1980. Arcades were very popular at the time with games like Pac-Man, Space Invaders, and Donkey Kong. One of the biggest companies in the video game market was Atari. Atari CEOs at the time were Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dandy. Atari and a few other companies were releasing their own home consoles. Video games on home consoles were nowhere near as good, but this meant you could have video games at home. At this time, video games were about getting the highest score possible and did not have an end. Except for one game, called Donkey Kong. It was the very first platformer. You play as Jumpman, trying to save Pauline, and you have to get from point A to point B while dodging barrels Donkey Kong's hurls at you. Companies at this time were trying to get into and release as many video games as fast as possible, without care for quality. Video game packaging did not help show what video games look like either. They would show what they wanted the games to look like. For example, the box art for a bowling video game looked like this, while the actual game looked like this. Nowadays, a lot of people blame E.T. as the sole reason for the video game crash, but it actually sold pretty well before everyone returned the copies they bought. The real cause was because there were way too many horrible games with no way to tell which games were good or bad and which ones you should get. People didn't trust the quality of the games and were just becoming tired of it. Then E.T. released, which was the straw that broke the camel's back. Finally, everyone stopped playing video games. Now, I must say, the video game crash wasn't worldwide and was exclusive to North America. Video games were thriving in other places. For example, Japan. Because it was really only in North America people were really actually paying attention to home consoles. Everywhere else, people played arcades, and arcades were just fine. But on July 15th, 1983, in Japan, Nintendo just released their newest home console, the Nintendo Family Computer, or the Famicom for short. The Famicom sold really well upon its release, with 19% of all homes in Japan owning a Famicom. At the time, Nintendo's president was Hishori Yamauchi, and the designer for the Famicom was Umura Masayuki. Nintendo, with all the money they were raking in, wanted to expand their reach to North America, but that was going to be difficult because of the video game crash, and they are located in Kyoto, Japan. So they didn't exactly know how to market it to America. So they called up Atari and asked for help, but Atari was not interested in having another loss and told them no. This meant Nintendo was on their own. Nintendo may be on their own, and they may not know how to market to North America, but that would be fine. This just meant they had to do a little more work. So they started hiring people in North America. One of the most important people they would hire was Gail Tilden. Gail Tilden did not know who Nintendo was, but she did know the video game. Donkey Kong. So when they told her they were the people who made that game, she was on board and was hired as a marketing manager in 1983. After a bit of thinking, Nintendo decided to redesign the console and rename it to the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NES for short. They also decided to not market the NES as a video game console, but instead as a toy for little kids, with add-ons like the Zapple Gun and Wob. Gail Tilden thought of having a stamp of approval to show which games were published by Nintendo and were high quality. For the box art of the NES, they would show what the game looks like, instead of art not showing the game. The NES came with cables to plug into an electrical socket and TV, controllers, a Zapple Gun, and a dual cartridge consisting of Duck Hunt plus Super Mario Bros. So, about Super Mario Bros. Remember Donkey Kong? Well, in Super Mario Bros., you play as what's now Nintendo's mascot, Jumpman, or now renamed as Mario. Or if you are playing Player 2, you now play as his brother, Luigi. This game is just like Donkey Kong, a platformer, but now it's longer, and with new obstacles and secrets. In the game, Mario is now in the Mushroom Kingdom and is trying to find and save Princess Toadstool from King Koopa. If you don't know who Princess Toadstool and King Koopa are, then it's probably because in America they were renamed to Princess Peach and Bowser. You start with 3 lives, but can get more by finding a 1-up or collecting 100 coins. But just like Donkey Kong, if you get hit once, you die. And if you lose all your lives, you restart the whole entire game. Unless you know what I know, of course. But even if you don't know the secret I figured out, you may be only able to get hit once. But there are multiple different power-ups that will keep you from dying, and you'll just lose the power-up instead. When you're playing 2-player mode, when you die, it will switch to the other player. And when they die, it will switch back to you. And then with the other game the NES came with, Duck Hunt, you use the Zapple Gun to hunt ducks. In 1985, Nintendo showed the NES at the Consumer Electronics Show and had a limited release before having the full release in February 1986. The NES costed $149.99, which would be $436.96 today. The marketing worked and the NES was a hit. Every child wanted one. More than 60 million consoles were sold worldwide. Video games were back. Some of the games that were sold for the NES were The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Bros. 2, which was exclusive to Japan, Metroid, The Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, Tecmo Bowl, Kid Icarus, Super Mario Bros. 2, which was exclusive to North America, Kirby's Adventure, Excite Bike, Doki Doki Panic, which was also exclusive to Japan, Dr. Mario, and Super Mario Bros. 3. Other companies like Atari tried to sell their own video game consoles, but just could not compete. If you wanted a video game, you wanted a Nintendo. Because of Nintendo, the video game market was revitalized, and they became the face of video games for a very long time. As time went on, and more powerful consoles came out, people started to worry about video games making kids violent due to how realistic and violent the games were starting to get. The fear only grew worse when some school shootings happened, and it was discovered that the shooters played video games. People pointed to video games as the cause for these shootings, and after more video games started to come out that were violent, there finally ended up being a court case with the Supreme Court about video game violence. And then a video game rating system came to be, known as the ESRB. Nowadays, Nintendo is still one of the most popular video game companies, but they're no longer considered the face of gaming. Video games are no longer viewed as kids' toys either, and now have become one of the biggest types of media in the world. If you go to the store, there will be aisles of just video games. Video games are so popular now that Universal Studios has opened a section in their theme parks called Super Nintendo World, with a Donkey Kong section coming soon. As of May 2023, the third highest grossing anime movie of all time was the Super Mario Bros. Movie, surpassing Frozen, Despicable Me 3, Incredibles 2, and Toy Story 3. You can go ask anyone, and you'll find people who play video games. I think this topic is important because it shows the history of how things got to the way they are now. Video games have now become very expensive to make, so if companies aren't careful, they may very well get shut down. For example, Telltale. Video games as a whole, though, will be fine, because the industry has become so big, and most video games are in great quality, and now if there is a problem with the game, it can be fixed in just a few days. Video games aren't just made by big companies anymore either, but now some really popular games are made by small indie teams, or even just one person. For example, Hollow Knight and Undertale. Video games have come a long way from the video game crash, all thanks to Nintendo bringing video games out of it. Because of what Nintendo did, I see video games staying for a long time. Ba 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 bum.